This happened just last summer. I'm 34, and I've spent years guiding eco-tours through the Canadian wilderness. I love sharing nature's beauty with tourists. I was looking forward to a busy weekend with a group eager to get away from city life. The night before the tour, I stood by my cabin. It started out quiet, just what I expected. I set my gear by the door and grabbed a quick bite. Then I heard a strange rustling in the underbrush nearby. I thought maybe it was just a curious animal. It could be anything out there, right? I decided to ignore it and focus on the group's excitement. The next morning, I gathered everyone for the tour. The sky was clear, and the forest looked amazing. We walked along the path, exploring the towering pines and tranquil lakes. But as the days passed, things started to feel off. I noticed strange symbols carved into the bark of trees along our route. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, maybe from other hikers. But the deeper we went, the more unnerved I became. At night, I'd hear unsettling sounds that made the hair on my neck stand up. My heart raced. I swear I heard whispers carried by the wind. I would lie in my cabin, staring into the dark, trying to shake it off. The tourists began to whisper among themselves too. Some claimed they saw shadowy figures moving in the distance, flickering just out of sight. I wanted to tell them it was nothing, just their imaginations. But I wasn't so sure anymore. One night, I went outside to take a breath of fresh air. I flinched as I saw something move near the tree line. I wanted to dismiss it, but my heart was pounding. I could not make out what it was, but it felt like something was watching me. My skin prickled with fear. I felt cold. I didn't want to turn back to the cabin, but I made myself do it. The next day, we found more symbols. I tried to explain them as art or graffiti, but deep down, I felt they were more. I wondered if they were warnings, or if they meant something else entirely. The atmosphere seemed to change among the group. They looked nervous and uncertain. I think I was too. I didn't know if the unsettling tension was all in our heads. Maybe we were all hallucinating, or maybe there was something much darker beneath the surface of this beautiful wilderness. I wished I had answers. I wished I could shake the feeling that we were not alone out there. Then, one of the tourists asked me, "What's really going on here?" I suddenly didn't have an answer. I turned to look at the woods behind us. The trees stood tall and silent, but I felt a chill run down my spine. As I stared, something moved in the shadows, and I was left wondering if we were truly safe. The air felt thicker, and the woods were darker than before. I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched, and it felt wrong. That night, I decided to stay alert. I thought about calling the tour off. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, hoping to find some peace. But it was only the beginning. The next morning, I gathered my courage and decided to press on with the tour. I needed to keep the mood light for the group. After all, they had come for an adventure. As we hiked deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt heavier than usual, and the songs of the birds had faded. We finally reached a small clearing where I often stopped for lunch. As the group settled down, I searched for anything unusual, hoping to find a distraction from my growing anxiety. That's when I saw a freshly carved symbol on a nearby tree. This one was different from the others. It looked ancient, almost tribal. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Hey, look at this!" I called out to the tourists. They gathered around, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I tried to joke about it, claiming it was just a local artist's work. But the laughter didn't last long. As I pointed out the symbol, I saw one of the tourists gasp. She was staring behind me, her eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" I asked, turning around. Nothing was there, but the woods felt tenser. I scanned the area, straining to see through the thick canopy. I wanted to laugh, to tell her it was probably just a shadow, but my gut twisted. Then, I heard the rustling again. This time it was louder and closer, echoing off the trunks of the trees. Maybe we should head back, I suggested, my voice more uncertain than I intended. The group murmured in agreement. We packed our things quicker than usual, and I led the way back, my heart racing. As we walked, I felt the same sensation from last night, the feeling of being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking among the trees. The whispering in the wind seemed to follow us, but I couldn't make out a single word. Then it happened. A shadow darted from behind a tree, and I froze. It was quick, too fast for me to recognize. The tourists noticed my reaction and looked at me with wide eyes. "Did you see that?" one asked, his voice shaky. "Yes," I replied, though I barely believed my own words. I turned back to the path ahead, trying to stay calm. But the woods were alive with an unsettling energy, and I could feel panic creeping in among the group. We pushed on, moving more quickly now. The trees closed in on us, the shadows deeper and more pronounced. Just as I thought we were making progress, the rustling came again, and this time it felt more deliberate. I instinctively quickened my pace. It felt like whatever was out there was gaining on us. Suddenly, I tripped over a root and fell to the ground. My heart raced as I heard a voice, faint but clear, whispering my name. "Help me!" Help desperately, I scrambled to my feet. I turned to the group, but they too seemed frozen, staring wide-eyed into the forest. "Keep moving!" I shouted, pushing them to move faster. Their fear was palpable, matching my own. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not just being watched, we were being hunted. As we burst back onto the main trail, I fought against my instincts to look back. Adrenaline coursed through me, but I felt something in the air shift. Finally, I reached the edge of our camping area, and relief washed over me like a cold wave. But just as I thought we were safe, I turned to face the woods behind us. In the midst of the trees, I saw a figure watching. It was still, almost impossible to define, and then it was gone. I felt a chill grip my heart. Whatever it was, it had seen us, and I was haunted by the question, what did it want? Once we were back at the campsite, I tried to shake off the unease that had settled in my stomach. The tourists were on edge, glancing toward the tree line as if expecting something to emerge. I could feel their anxiety feeding into my own. "Let us get a fire going," I suggested, hoping the warmth and light would ease the tension. They reluctantly agreed, and we gathered wood. As the flames flickered to life, I felt the darkness of the woods creeping back in. I took a deep breath, trying to direct my focus to the fire. The group sat huddled around the flames, the crackling sounds filling the silence. We exchanged stories to lift our spirits, but my mind kept drifting back to that shadow, to the whispering voice I had heard. I snuck glances at the forest, half expecting to see the figure again. Then one of the tourists, a young man, spoke up. "Did any of you see the symbol on the tree?" he asked. "Was it just me?" I nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Yeah, it seemed different. I wonder what it means." "The woods around here have a lot of legends," he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Some say they're haunted. People have gone missing near these parts." A chill ran down my spine, but I forced a smile. "It's probably just a tale meant to scare hikers. We're safe, right?" But his look told me he wasn't convinced. The weight of discomfort grew heavier around us, mingling with the smoke from the fire. As the night deepened, an unnatural silence blanketed the area. The usual sounds of crickets and owls had vanished. It felt wrong. I glanced over my shoulder, half fearing I might see the figure again. Instead, I was met with a wall of darkness, the trees swallowed by shadows. Suddenly, the puffs of wind died down, leaving an eerie stillness. Then, the rustle of leaves broke the silence, a quick, sharp sound. All heads snapped towards the source. The group huddled closer together, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" Someone whispered. Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. They were slow and deliberate, stepping as if the person or thing was savoring the moment. I felt a chill grip my heart. It's probably just an animal, I lied, but the words felt hollow. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, there was total silence again. I could hardly breathe. The fire flickered, and it felt as if the shadows themselves leaned closer, eager to eavesdrop. "No, that's not right," one of the tourists said, a tremor in his voice. "That doesn't sound like any animal." Just then, a loud crack echoed from within the trees. The tourists jumped, some gasping. My instincts screamed to get inside the tents, but the fire held us like a beacon. I raised my voice, trying for a calm facade. "It's probably just a branch. Let us stay by the fire." But that whisper returned, soft and insistent. Help! Panic surged in me. The tourists looked around, visibly shaken. "Who said that?" another asked, clutching their friend's arm. "I don't know," I answered, my heart racing. "Stay close." At that moment, I noticed movement in the tree line. A shadow darted again, and then it was gone. But the fear in my stomach told me it wouldn't stay hidden for long. I gripped the log I was sitting on, trying to rally my thoughts. We had to keep calm and stick together. But deep down, I sensed we were not alone, and whatever was out there was watching. And then my heart sank as I realized, the whisper wasn't just a voice in the wind. It was calling for help. We sat in tense silence, eyes darting between the fire and the looming trees. The flickering flames offered little comfort. I could see fear etched on everyone's faces, the dim light casting long shadows that danced like phantoms around us. I decided to act. "Let us check the perimeter," I suggested, trying to sound brave. The group exchanged uncertain glances, but eventually, they nodded. We couldn't just sit there, frozen in fear. We needed to face whatever was lurking in the dark. We grabbed flashlights and approached the edge of the clearing, where the light from the fire slowly faded into the blackness of the forest. I took the lead, every step heavier than the last. The whispered plea still echoed in my mind, "Help." As we neared the tree line, my pulse raced, the silence closing in around us. I shone my flashlight into the thick underbrush, revealing nothing but tangled branches and the occasional glint of an eye reflecting back at us, small animals skittering away. "See? Just animals," I said, my voice shaky. But as I turned to reassure the group, I noticed a faint glow at the base of a tree, something shimmering just out of reach. "What is that?" the young man from earlier asked, peering closer. I pointed my flashlight toward the light, my curiosity battling my instincts. We moved as a unit, stepping cautiously closer to the source. There, etched into the tree's bark, was a symbol that looked eerily similar to the one we had seen earlier, the one that had haunted my thoughts since our arrival. It glowed faintly, pulsating almost as if it were alive. Before I could say anything, a figure emerged from the shadows to my left. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. It was a woman, her hair disheveled and her eyes wide with terror. "Please, you have to help me," she cried, her voice hoarse. The tourists and I exchanged startled looks. This wasn't what I had expected. Was this the source of the whisper? "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was lost," she said, panic rising in her eyes. "I don't know how long it's been. I can't find my way back. They're watching." She pointed into the trees, her hands shaking. "You have to get me out of here." The tension in the air thickened, transforming from fear to something deeper. "Who's watching?" another tourist whispered, stepping back. Just then, I heard a rustle again, louder this time. I swung my flashlight around, but the beam hit only dark, looming shapes. "What is happening?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. Without thinking, I took a step toward her, hoping to offer some reassurance. "Let us get you back to camp." You're safe with us. But even as I said it, I felt a growing unease. What did she mean by they were watching? Suddenly, the air felt charged, and the shadows shifted as if they were alive. You shouldn't have come here, the woman warned, stepping back, her eyes wide again. And that's when I saw it, figures emerging from the forest, shrouded in shadows. They moved with a fluid grace, surrounding us. My breath caught in my throat as I realized, we were not just dealing with a voice in the dark. Something far more dangerous was out there, closing in. The figures drew closer, their shapes becoming clearer in the beam of my flashlight. My heart hammered in my chest. They were humanoid but with long, tangled hair and skin that seemed to blend in with the dark trees. Stay back! I shouted, raising my flashlight as a shield. But my voice felt weak, lost in the suffocating silence. My friends huddled behind me, eyes wide, breathless with fear. The woman next to me began to shake. They're not here to help us, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They want something. The first figure took a step forward. Its eyes glinted like cold steel in the light, and it opened its mouth, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. I stumbled back, instinctively pulling the group closer. What do you want? I yelled, hoping to assert some control over the chaotic moment. They continued to advance, their movements smooth and deliberate. You don't belong here, one of them said, the voice low and unnatural, echoing off the trees. Leave before it's too late. My breath quickened. This couldn't be real. I glanced back at my group. We need to go, I said urgently. The young man, who had been so curious earlier, now looked terrified. But what about her? He asked, pointing at the woman as if she were the center of this nightmare. She turned to us, tears streaming down her face. I can't go back. They won't let me. Don't listen to her. One of the other tourists screamed, his voice breaking. We need to run. But all I could do was stare at her, torn between compassion and the instinct to escape. We can't leave her, I said, knowing it was the wrong choice. It felt wrong. Yet what if she was telling the truth? The figures closed in tighter, and I could see now that they held something shiny, objects that glimmered in the flashlight's beam. The shadows danced, making it hard to focus. Then, without warning, the lead figure lunged. I screamed, and in that moment, everything changed. The light from my flashlight flickered wildly, illuminating the chaos for just a moment. Get down! I shouted, pulling the woman to the ground just as the first figure swiped at the air above us. A rush of adrenaline filled me, and I felt a spark of determination mixed with primal fear. We scrambled backward, and my mind raced. We can't fight them, I thought. We have to find a way to escape. Just then, I spotted a gap in the trees a few yards away. My stomach twisted at the thought, but I knew the way out might only be through the shadows. Over there! I yelled, pointing to the gap, urgency fueling my voice. We run now. The woman hesitated, glancing at the figures as if caught in some invisible grip. You'll never make it, she whispered, but I didn't give her a chance to pull away. I grabbed her by the arm and started running toward the trees, the rest of the group close behind. The air was thick as we sprinted, our hearts beating loud in our ears. But as we rushed forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had disturbed something that wasn't done with us yet. Behind us, I heard a low growl, and I had no doubt that we were being pursued. Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered one last time, and the world shifted. Something was waiting for us. Keep going. I urged, but in the darkness, it felt like something was pulling me back, ready to claim its due. I felt the heavy, suffocating darkness envelop us, and my heart raced in panic. I pushed forward, trying to keep my grip on the woman's arm. I could hear the others behind me, breathing heavily, their fear palpable. Suddenly, a sharp cry shattered the silence, and it wasn't just from us. It echoed through the trees, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the snapping of twigs. Something else was out there. Something alive. Run! I shouted, my voice cracking. We barreled through the narrow opening between the trees, branches snagging our clothes as we squeezed through. The forest felt thick and alive, like it was closing in on us. Just as we emerged on the other side, I glanced back. The figures were no longer in sight, but the low growl lingered, reverberating in my chest. I didn't want to think about what it meant. We stumbled into a small clearing, moonlight spilling down like silver water. I stopped to catch my breath, the woman pulling away, eyes darting around. "We can't stay here," she warned, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to focus on her. "We need to regroup, catch our breath." "No," she hissed, eyes widening as she looked past me. "They'll find us. We need to keep moving." Before I could respond, a snap came from the underbrush, the sound precise and deliberate. My stomach dropped as I turned, facing the darkness we just escaped. Shadows sprawled across the clearing, twisted shapes lurking just beyond the tree-line. And then I saw them. Shadows rising, melding together until they formed those haunting figures from before. They stood still, their cold eyes fixated on us with unsettling intent. "Why are they just watching?" whispered one of the other tourists, his voice shaking. "What do they want?" Raising my flashlight, I flicked it on, illuminating their grotesque forms. The leader stepped forward, revealing its jagged teeth once more, and my breath caught in my throat. "You have come to take something," it said, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. "And now, you cannot leave without it." "What do you mean?" I called, half defiant, half terrified. "We didn't take anything." A twisted grin spread across its face. "Not yet." My mind raced, desperation creeping in. I had no idea how to fight this. "We need to find the others. We can talk this out. Please." But the air had thickened again, as if the forest itself was closing ranks around us. The others were ghostly pale, shadows of themselves, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "Now." The figure taunted, its voice dripping with amusement. "Now you think of talking." In that moment, I realized retreating to the trees might not be an option. As if sensing my thoughts, the leader took another menacing step forward. I could feel the tension in the air as it shifted. "Run!" I yelled, but I was already moving before the words spilled out. The others followed, fear propelling us, but something heavier chased us from behind. The darkness grew thicker the farther we ran, almost alive. Then, I stumbled, my foot catching on something unseen. I crashed to the ground, pain lancing through my ankle. Fear surged within me as I turned to find the figures now much closer. I could feel their eyes on me, cold and calculating. I had to escape. Pushing against the ground, I looked back at the woman, her face a mask of fear. "Keep going," I shouted, determination taking root in me despite the fear. But my heart raced for both her and the others. That's when I saw it, a glint among the roots beneath me. In the dim light, it looked like a small, ornate object. Part of me wanted to grab it, to understand what it was, but I could feel the weight of time slipping away. I made a choice. I reached for it. But right as my fingers brushed the cool surface, I heard a chilling growl. I hadn't noted it before, but it felt much closer now. Then everything went dark once again, and I felt the pull of the shadows behind me. I had about a second to wonder if this would be my last choice before I was enveloped in a chilling grip. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me whole, a suffocating cloak that threatened to drag me into an abyss. My heart pounded, the pulse ringing in my ears, drowning out all sound. I couldn't tell if I was still on the ground or floating through that endless blackness. Then, with a sudden jolt, I felt myself being dragged up. The grip around me was cold and firm. It was then that a sharp light broke through the void, illuminating a twisted face inches from mine, its mouth moving in an unsettling rhythm. Panic surged again as instinct kicked in, and I kicked out desperately. "Let me go!" I yelled, but my voice sounded foreign, lost amid the cacophony of growls and whispers that filled the air. This wasn't the forest anymore, it felt like I was somewhere else, somewhere they controlled. Before I could wrest myself free, I was flung forward, crashing onto the ground. The abrupt transition snapped me back to reality. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus. My flashlight lay next to me, flickering nervously. Distant shadows danced in a circle, their forms half hidden by the underbrush. "Get up!" came a voice, sharp and urgent. It was the woman from earlier, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. I scrambled to my feet, the pain in my ankle flaring as I put weight on it. "They're coming. We need to move." I glanced around, confusion swirling in my mind. The figures from before were regrouping, charging through the tree line, more numerous than before. Their eyes glinted in the dim light, fixed on us with predatory intent. Without a second thought, we took off again, the forest seeming to shift and twist around us. The ground was uneven, roots and rocks threatening to trip us up at every step. I cursed under my breath, forcing myself to keep pace with the others. "Where's the rest?" I gasped, my lungs burning. "Lost, I think," she shouted back, her eyes wild. "I don't know where they are." We dashed through the thick underbrush, the shadows echoing our movements, hungry and relentless. The growls grew louder, more urgent. I swallowed hard, wrestling with the mounting fear that clawed at my chest. A sudden sound, a low whistle cut through the chaos, freezing us in our tracks. I turned to the woman, fear lacing my voice. "What was that?" But before she could respond, a tall figure appeared, silhouetted against the moonlight. It was unlike the others, towering over us, its shape almost human but distorted in an unsettling way. It raised a hand, and from its fingers, a faint glow emerged, casting eerie shadows across its face. "Leave, while you still can," it whispered, its voice like rustling leaves, haunting yet strangely compelling. "They do not seek what you have, but you must go. Now." I blinked, processing the warning. "But what about the others?" I croaked. The towering figure's gaze hardened. "There's no time. You must trust me." It stepped aside, gesturing towards a narrow path that wound deeper into the woods. I hesitated, torn between the risk of the unknown and the lurking threat behind us. "They're coming," the woman screeched, her voice tinged with panic. The shadows surged, and adrenaline shot through my veins. I nodded, urgency overtaking my fear. "Okay. Let us go." We darted down the narrow path, the whispers of the shadows echoing behind us, the flicker of the figure still visible as it retreated into the night. As we ran, I knew we could still be caught, but we had to escape first. I glanced back one last time, the darkness hungrily consuming everything in its wake. What did it want? What was waiting for us ahead? Questions swirled in my mind, but survival took priority. Just then, I saw more glints amid the roots beneath my feet. A whole collection of ornate objects lay half-buried. In the agonizing split second, I realized something. What if that was the key to understanding it all? But before I could decide, the whispers surged, urging us forward into the unknown. I pushed deeper into the woods with the woman beside me, each step heavier than the last. The sounds of pursuit loomed behind, relentless and hungry. My mind raced as I fought to keep it together, desperately trying to think clearly amidst the panic. What did that thing mean? I panted, frustration bubbling to the surface. What do we have that they want? She shot me a glance, her expression a mix of fear and determination. I don't know. Just keep moving. The trees around us began to thin out, and I could feel a shift in the air. The shadows behind us, constant and unyielding, seemed to hesitate, almost as if caught between two worlds. A part of me wondered if we would be safe if we just kept running. Suddenly, the narrow path opened onto a small clearing. Moonlight bathed the area in a glow, casting odd shapes on the ground. But my relief was short-lived. A chill raced up my spine as I noticed the clearing was littered with the same ornate objects I had seen before, beautiful trinkets, shimmering but tarnished, all half-buried as if forgotten. "Look!" I exclaimed, my heart racing not just from fear but also from the allure of the strange artifacts. "What are those?" The woman hesitated, her breath catching. "I don't know if we should stop. We need to keep moving." But something compelled me to step closer, to inspect the nearest object. It was a delicate silver locket, adorned with swirling patterns that gleamed in the moonlight. My fingers brushed over it, and a jolt of energy surged through me. The world around me seemed to quaver, as if I had tapped into something latent. "Don't touch it!" she yelled, urgent panic ringing in her voice. I hesitated but couldn't pull my hand away. That's when I felt it, a whisper, a soft voice that echoed in my mind. "Help us!" Almost instinctively, I dropped the locket, stepping back. What was that? I gasped, shock rippling through me. The shadows lurking at the edge of the clearing stirred, the growls rising in a chorus of fury. A dark figure, twisted and ugly, slunk forward as if drawn by my moment of hesitation. It had the same glinting eyes as the creatures from before. "Go!" the woman shouted, pulling my arm hard as she began to back away. We sprinted from the clearing, the dark figure pursuing us with a speed that didn't seem possible. I could hear the growls escalate, the breath of whatever it was heavy on the air behind us. The panic surged like a tide, threatening to drag me under. "Where now?" I shouted, looking for any sign of escape. "Over there," she directed, pointing to the edge of the woods where a gnarled tree stood, its branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. We veered toward it, but just as we approached, the ground gave way beneath us. We both fell, tumbling down a steep embankment, branches clawing at our clothes. My ankles screamed in protest as we landed in a tangled heap at the bottom. "Get up," she urged, her voice strained but insistent. I pushed myself off the ground, breathless and aching. Did they follow us? We glanced back, and in that moment, I noticed the clearing above the figure was peering down at us, watching, waiting. That's when I felt it again, the whisper, insistent and almost familiar, "Find the heart." "What heart?" I murmured, shaken. But before I could voice my thoughts, I heard the rustling around us. Something was moving, closing in. The shadows were no longer just behind us. Now they had encircled us. I caught the woman's fearful gaze as we prepared to face what lay ahead. We had nowhere left to run, and deep down, I knew we had to find out what this heart truly meant. The rustling grew louder, branches snapping under unseen weight. I turned to the woman, my heart racing. "We can't stay here." She nodded, eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. I could feel the heat of my panic rising each time a shadow moved. "That whisper," I started, but she cut me off. "Don't think about it. We need to find shelter. Come on." We stumbled through the underbrush, adrenaline driving us forward despite the aching in my ankle. Every sound felt amplified, the slightest crack or whisper sending shivers down my spine. The growls from the clearing echoed faintly, distant but not gone. Ahead, the woods opened up to a rocky outcropping. "We can hide there." I pointed. "Let us go." We sprinted toward it, ducking behind a pile of large stones. My breath came in gasps as I pressed my back against the cool surface, the jagged rock biting into my skin. "What now?" I whispered, peering around the corner. She took a moment, catching her breath. "We need to wait. Maybe they'll lose our scent." As we huddled in the shadows, I couldn't shake the feeling that the events didn't just start here. The locket, the whispers, something had drawn us into this nightmare. I glanced at her, wondering if she felt the same pull. Suddenly, the whisper returned, this time sharper, more defined. Find the heart. It was insistent, almost urgent, resonating in my mind like a distant drumbeat. Did you hear that? I blurted out, feeling frantic. What? No, I didn't. She replied, her brow furrowing. The tension in the air thickened as the rustling grew nearer. I strained to listen, trying to decipher the sound. It wasn't just the creatures anymore, something else lingered, a haunting murmur that grew louder with each second. Please, I mumbled, clutching the rock tighter, what is the heart? But the truth was, I was more terrified of the answer than the chase itself. Then everything shifted. A shadow moved past the front of our hiding spot, different from the others. It was massive, almost human-like but twisted and hulking. I held my breath, heart hammering against my ribs as I stayed completely still. The figure paused. I could see the outline of long, sharp claws and hear the soft, rasping breath. My gut twisted with dread. Out of instinct, I whispered, we need to move. Now. As I turned my head to make a plan, I caught sight of a faint flicker beyond the rocks. A glimmering light danced among the trees, bright and beckoning. That light, I started, hope igniting. Maybe it's safe. No, it could be a trap. She hissed, her eyes wide with fear. But I was already moving toward it, drawn to the shimmer like a moth to a flame. I had to know what was waiting. I had to find the heart. Wait. She pleaded, but I didn't stop. I stepped into the light, the warmth surrounding me. And just like that, the world around us shifted. The growls faded into silence, and I felt a current of power coursing through me. Then something hissed from behind. I whipped around, pulse racing. The dark figure was closing in, anger burning in its eyes. In that instant, every instinct screamed for me to run, but another part urged me closer to the light. I was torn between two paths as the shadows closed in, both enticing and terrifying. That's when I realized the heart was right in front of me, and I was about to discover what it truly was. As the pulsating light enveloped me, time lost its meaning. I felt the warmth suffuse my entire being, washing away the cold fear that clung to me in the shadows. It was intoxicating, and for a moment, I believed I was safe. But the growls behind me grew louder, a menacing reminder of the danger that still lurked in the dark. Don't you dare remain in that one place. The woman shouted, snapping me back into reality. I looked back, and the shadow figures were no longer at bay. They surged forward, their disdain for our presence palpable, an ancient rage directed toward us. Trust the light. I yelled over my shoulder, feeling the truth in my gut. I didn't take a step toward the flickering glow, instead, I felt its pull guiding me forward. Whatever that light represented, it was a beacon of hope or perhaps our only chance of understanding what we were truly facing. With one last glance at the growling shadows, we dashed deeper into the illumination, the brilliance swallowing us whole. As we crossed the threshold, the woods shifted inexplicably. The trees around us were no longer the same foreboding sentinels, they had become guardians, leaning toward us, their leaves rustling softly like a welcoming breath. Look! The woman gasped, pointing to the foot of a grand oak that radiated the light. There, partially buried in the earth, was an object, a heart-shaped stone pulsating in tandem with the light, radiating warmth. A sense of urgency gripped me, this was what the whispers had beckoned us toward. Help! Came a voice, echoing in the clearing. It wasn't just the woman's voice, it belonged to others too, trapped in the darkness. The heart of this place was crying out to us, begging to be found. What do we do? She asked, trembling. We need to take it, I said, my hand instinctively reaching for the heart. As our fingers brushed against the cool surface, a surge of energy coursed through my body, unraveling memories that felt deeply ancient. I saw glimpses of those lost to the woods, their faces twisted in despair, their silhouettes melding with the shadows. No! I cried, pulling back. The heart began to dim, and with it came a rush of growling anger from the figures behind us. I felt the impending doom twist my stomach. "Destroy it!" I shouted, clutching the woman's hand. "We can't let them have it." "But we need to." But as the words left my lips, the shadows closed in, their shapes shifting under the tree canopy, leaving no room for question. The figures lunged forward, eyes glinting with malicious intent, their growls a chorus of fury. "Run!" I yelled, but the heart pulsed powerfully, integrating itself within me as I held the woman's gaze. "No matter what happens next, stay by my side." We pushed forward, abandoning the heart for the moment, making our way toward a new passage that seemed to form out of nowhere under the urgency of the shadows. Muffled growls erupted around us, but inner dread morphed into a fierce determination. "They want us to fear it, they want us to falter," my mind whispered, bolstered by the sense of purpose igniting within. The heart wasn't a mere object, it was the essence of this place, pulsating with the shared energy of those who had been trapped in this reality. Ahead, just beyond the trees, I saw a sudden burst of light and felt an alignment through the darkness. We barreled through, the voices of loss swirling around us. The forest itself began to shift, as if recognizing our resolve. Still, another growl erupted like thunder, and I dared a glance back. The figures were not just approaching, they were transforming, breathlessly merging into one colossal darkness. I felt my body tense, but there was something different. The heart it pulsed harder, sending vibrations through the ground, stirring the air with a frenzied whisper, "Help me!" Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and the shadowy figure halted, uncertainty rippling through its form. This was our moment. Trusting the light deep within, I shouted, "Leave us." My words were more than a plea, they carried the weight of every lost cry from the woods. For an instant, everything hung suspended. The darkness quaked, jeering at the audacity of our defiance. Then, to my astonishment, it hesitated, the form beginning to dissolve slowly, the howls morphing into anguish. Together, we pushed forward, bursting free from the forest and spilling onto an expanse of open land. The moon hung high, illuminating the path ahead. Behind, the shadows thinned, but the echo of the heart still pulsed gently within me. As we paused to gather our breath, I glanced back at the darkened woods, tangled and full of secrets. I still didn't know if the shadows had relinquished their hold or if this was merely a temporary reprieve. But I had learned something significant: the heart's call, the pleas of the lost, and the strength within each of us could bridge the unbridgeable if only for a time. "We made it," I whispered, and the woman nodded, tears gleaming in her eyes, relief washing over her face. But as the wind whispered through the grass, I couldn't ignore the lingering uncertainty. Would they ever truly release their grip? I felt the weight of unanswered questions. Time ebbed and flowed around me, and even as we moved forward, I sensed the pull of the shadows lingering just beyond reach, an unyielding promise of the unknown. What truly lives in the entwined shadows of the wild remained to be seen, and part of me understood the journey of discovery was far from over. I didn't know what awaited us in the darkness or how widely its reach could extend. But for now, we had escaped. Yet, that fleeting victory only deepened the mystery. I glanced at the woman beside me. "Let us go home," I said. But as we ventured onward, I still felt a pang of apprehension, a fear that this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just a different beginning.